Hey guys, it's TheSketchMonkey and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm back at Genesis of Littleton to have a look at this gorgeous stately SUV that we have right here. This is the Genesis GV80, and guess what? Genesis has confirmed that they're going to build the GV80 Coupe. Remember that beautiful orange thing that they introduced a couple of months back? It looked production ready. I said that in my video, and they are going to put that into production. I think that's going to be one of the best looking coupe SUVs out there. But in this video, we're gonna have a look at the normal SUV. So we're gonna have a look at the front, side, rear, the interior, and then we're gonna take this for a drive. Let's have a look at some of the basic spec and tech of the 2023 Genesis GV80. You have a 3.5-liter turbo V6 putting out 375 horsepower, 391 pound-feet of torque, connected to an 8-speed automatic transmission. 0 to 60 is done in 5.3 seconds. Fuel economy sits at 18 city, 21 highway, and the price for this is $79,200. Starting with the front end design of the GV80, this is of course the big brother, meaning that styling is a little bit restrained and on a conservative side, and that's exactly how it should be. Compare this to the smaller SUVs that Genesis has and the smaller sedans as well. This feels a lot more structural in the front end. For example, have a look at the sharpness of the grille, the sharp corners. There is no organic feel in this thing. This feels more architectural. However, there are a couple of things in the lower section that I still, even though it looks so good, there's just one line that I would love to redesign on this car. Before we jump into the redesign here and the tiny little tweak that I want to do to this car, just have a look at these gorgeous headlights with the two-line design that Genesis is nailing on every single model right now. So these graphics actually continue into the side, in the side indicator, which you're gonna have a look at when we look at the side view, and of course also in the rear end. So what do I want to change in this front end? You see this piece right here, in this line specifically. Everything here is horizontal. The headlights are horizontal, the grille is horizontal, but down here this has a slight angle to it, this little wing. I'm not sure it comes up on the camera, I hope it does. So what I want to do is just bring that angle down to be horizontal as well and in line with the rest of the graphics. I know it's just a tiny little tweak. For me, when I first saw this, it's one of those things that just pops out at me that I want to change when I see the car. And then you have some functional air vents right here on the side as well. Pretty cool. One detail in the front end that I think Genesis is doing really well, it looks really good on pretty much every single model that they have, is this integration of the emblem in the front. It looks like it's sliding or surfing over some calm waters and creating this wake with the lines that goes into the hood of the car. I think it's a small little detail in the front end, but it also adds a lot of dynamic feeling, specifically up top on the hood, which is something that a lot of car manufacturers consider. Coming around to the side of the GV80, and this is where it gets really interesting in my opinion. Remember when we talked about the front headlights and the daytime run lights here with the two-line graphic? As you can see, if we draw two lines across the entire rear end, they're gonna go parallel with each other all the way in to the taillight. And I think this is such a cool design feature from Genesis, and it definitely brings in a very strong identity for the brand itself. So what do we have when we talk about the wheel and tire setup of the GV80? In this case, we have the 265 R20s all around. However, you can get this with the 22-inch wheels, and I think those wheels are some of the best looking wheels that you can put on an SUV today, and I would definitely go for the 22-inch wheels in this case. Looking at the shoulder line here, have a look at this sharp line above the front axle, and I've said this before, the current creative or design director of Genesis is Mr. Luke Dunkerwolke, which has been working with Bentley before, and looking at this sloping line here, this feels very Bentley and Rolls-Royce to me, with the sloping line going down like that. It also reminds me a little bit about the Lincoln SUV, specifically I think the Aviator, I think, has the same type of sloping roof line with the sloping shoulder line, and it just creates, looking at it from the view that you're looking at it from right now, it feels like the car is about to just move forward when it's sitting still, thanks to that treatment of the lines in the top part. Just like with the G70 that I just reviewed here as well, we do have some chrome pieces and trim pieces around the greenhouse here, for example, but the same goes for this GV80 here. The Genesis is more angled, a little bit more angled toward luxury than, for example, BMW, so I think a couple of chrome details for example, here in the door handles as well, and of course around the greenhouse. It suits this overall design and the philosophy of Genesis. So I'm not gonna switch those out that I normally do and turn those into black. Down here we have a big chrome, almost like a big mirror in the bottom piece right here with this line that cuts into the body. And you know what this does on a big SUV like this? You should have learned that by now, and that is to carve out some of the volumes and the mass in the lower part, make it feel a little more nimble than what it is. All right, so coming around to the rear end design of the GV80, 4-wheel drive, 3.5 turbo. You have Genesis stamped in the middle section of the trunk, and I think it's an absolutely stunning design. I'm not going to say that this is my favorite view of the GV80, because I think the side view is so special in this case that it is the side view that I'm going to have to pick as my favorite view for this design. What I love here is that we have this ellipse going around from the very top part here around into the taillights itself and coming around at the lower part to house the rear end graphics in a very elegant and unique way. This ellipse here creates also a strong identity for Genesis from a rear view. You have it in the X Coupe, for example, which I really hope that Genesis will put into production. It's such a good looking car, and a couple of other Genesis models. If there's one thing I could change on this specific design here, it's so clean, it's so elegant and beautiful in the rear. There's just one thing that kind of ruins the whole thing, specifically the top part of this design, and that is this wiper. Why, Genesis? I want an answer to this. Why did they put a wiper here when you have this massive shelf up here? You could easily have hidden the wiper underneath here and have this be a lot cleaner than what it is with the wiper visible like this. But I'm gonna forgive Genesis for doing that, because overall the rear end, the side and the front of this car just looks absolutely beautiful in all angles. You have the reverse lights down here. When I reviewed the G70, I said that I'm not so sure about the oval exhaust that we have in the G70 because it doesn't fit anything else in the car. There are no ovals anywhere else on the G70. Here though, they went with this very interesting design that has a little corner down here in the middle. At the same time, we do have an ellipse in the GV80, so they could have gone with elliptical exhaust here, and I think that would suit this design a lot better than the G70. But now that we have an ellipse in the rear, they decided to switch it up to a design that I would like to have more suited for the G70. Welcome to the interior of the GV80, the 2023 model year. So what we have in here is a 12.3-inch gauge cluster, which looks extremely similar to the one in the G70. It looks very good because we have a nice housing for it right here that sticks up pretty high, and also has a very deep cap to it, so no problems with glares there. And then we have a 14.5-inch infotainment screen up here, which it's been designed in a very wide format, and I think it doesn't bother me to have that up there because it's so low and it's so wide that it doesn't intrude. I can see the hood before the screen kind of takes up space, so it doesn't take up any visual space from the visibility outside. Really like that. You have a lot of functions in here, going to the home button, for example, and you can swipe through here. Pretty responsive navigation menu. We can go into setup, for example, and check out the vehicle drive modes, which are all customizable here. You can change the cluster settings and a bunch of different things in here. The main thing is that it is very responsive, and I love the fact that it is in a wide format so it doesn't stick up too much. Looking at the integration of this dash itself, it's a pretty simplistic dash. I do love that we have the vents going all the same graphics of the vents. We have 3 vents here. It's not entirely vented, this whole slot that we have here. One vent for the passenger and two vents right here in the middle, and another one at the left side of the steering wheel. Very easy to use. You figure out how to do this immediately, and I love that you can see the slots of the vent itself moving in there, so you can figure out where exactly the air is going to blow. Further down, this is pretty interesting. We do have a dial for the climate control temperature, and then if you want to change the fan speed or where the air blows up, if you want it on your feet or up top or in the middle, or the fan speed itself, you use this little display that you have in the middle. I don't really mind this integration. I'm not sure even if I prefer having physical buttons for the fan speed and the direction of the air, because The main thing is just to control the temperature really quick when you want to do that. The fan speed and stuff like that is pretty easily laid out here, so it's not that hard to figure out how to do that. You also have heated and cooled seats, no physical buttons for that. It's all in this little display right here, and heated steering wheel as well. Up top you have the same buttons that we have in a lot of Genesis models, the map, nav, the favorite button, and the radio, media, and setup. Moving further down, here's where you have the wireless charging underneath this gorgeous wooden, I think this is real wood. It's not just a texture on here. It definitely feels and looks like real wood. But underneath here you have a USB port, and you have the wireless charging underneath this lid. Moving further down, you have this dial again to choose if you want to use the touch screen, if you want to stretch up there, or if you're more comfortable using this dial, you can choose to do that as well. It's totally, completely up to you. You have choices in the Genesis. Here you have the controls for the radio settings as well, the volume and the tune, back, home, menu, and so on. This is a beautiful looking gear selector. Right now we're in park. It looks like a crystal with some metal going around it, and the red P inside of it, instead of it, has been laser cut out of this piece of aluminum or something. Details like this this is what makes Genesis feel like a more upscale brand than what you're paying for, in my opinion. It's all these small details and the designs that we have in the interior specifically, but also the exterior looks very, very good in this car. Let's see what we have underneath here. I guess we have, my guess was right, we do have 2 cup holders, and that's about it. Let's cover that back up. Here you have the buttons for the parking cameras, the parking sensors, the center lock, diff lock, and what that means is that you lock the power 50-50 front and back. Then you have the hill descent control as well, and of course you have the dial for the drive mode. So you have snow, eco, comfort, sport, and custom. Probably gonna try both comfort and sport here to see the difference between them. And the gauge cluster, I just noticed that now, changes from comfort to sport, and the needle for the tachometer is now on fire and glowing when you have it in sport. Very cool little graphic details that I'm sure the user experience designers had a lot of fun playing around with. In the center console here you have a split opening. You have this little thing that you can pop up and put, I'm not sure if you can't fit a big pen in here. It's way too small for that, but you can fit a lot of markers and pens in this center console for when you feel that urge to just start sketching a car. Looking at these seats, of course, this is gonna be a little bit more angled towards GT style seats and luxury. They do have nice bolstering to them though, and you still have the buttons here on the side. If you're sitting in the back and you want to adjust the seats, you can do that from the rear seats, which is pretty convenient. Steering wheel design. This has an elegant approach to the steering wheel because we don't have a third spoke at the bottom, which would make it feel more sporty. This has an ellipse in the middle. I like that because it comes back with the graphics that we have in the rear end that houses the rear end graphics. You have metal, everything metal around here. It feels very premium, and I'm really glad that Genesis is focusing a lot on their you know, all these details. They play with your senses in different ways. If this were to be plastic, for example, but now we have some solid metals here. You can scroll through whatever you want in the center gauge cluster to customize that as you like. On the left side you have the controls for the radio. On the right side, as always, you have the control for Genesis, at least for the cruise control settings. Looking at the doors, they look very, very elegant with this flowy design. It doesn't look too organic like we have in other Genesis products. This is more just as we have with the outside. The outside stateliness comes into the interior with these, for example, horizontal lines that we have in the dash, but also less stylized door panels and more structured. I really like the wood texture that we have up top in combination with the metal feeling in the door handles themselves. Looking up top, we have dual sunroofs, one for the front seat and one for the rear seats as well. I'm gonna keep these closed for now, but we do have a separation for it right in the middle of the two screens. With that said, let's jump into the back seat. I don't think I'm gonna have a problem sitting behind my own driving position at 6'1", but we need to find out. All right, so jumping into the back seat behind myself, and I'm 6'1", and there is plenty of room here, just like we expected when we sat in the front seat. I have a lot of leg room, and the headroom is just fantastic here as well. Down in the middle, you do have a couple of vents, a little bit of storage, a USB, 2 USB ports back here, and a house outlet. And here you can see these controls for the seat. So if I'm sitting back here and I feel like the front passengers are taking up way too much leg room back here, I can just manually adjust it from back here and annoy the heck out of who's sitting in the front passenger seat. Alright guys, setting off in the 2023 Genesis GV80. What a beautiful SUV this is. And it pulls pretty hard. I have it in sport. I didn't even notice. It pulls pretty hard. 375 horsepower from this 3.5 liter twin turbo V6 connected to an 8-speed automatic transmission. 0 to 60 in about 5.2 seconds. Not bad for the size of this thing and all the features that you have. It must add a lot of weight, but it's still pretty nimble, and the steering feels very precise in sport. The comfort is still, you know, I'm not complaining at all about the comfort in sport either. It feels very solid and nothing to complain about there. I'm gonna try it in comfort in just a minute. All right, so I have it in manual mode now, or I thought I did. Now I'm in manual mode, I think. I'm in 3rd gear. Let's see if we can get it down to 2nd, or if it will let us. All right, we're down to 2nd. It sounds pretty good too in sport, and I love that the needle, the tachometer needle, I love that they made it on fire when you're in sport. Probably not a car that I would use with the pedals too much. They're not, I mean, they're okay, but the package of this thing just doesn't feel like, actually it's pretty fast gear shifts when you're using the manual transmission. And it is a little bit of more fun than having it on automatic. But what this car is, I think, made for is to have that little sporty touch to an elegant GT SUV. I think that's the whole package of this thing. So what I'm gonna do now is turn around, do one last pull, and then I'm gonna put it in comfort mode and see if I notice any difference, which I'm sure I'm going to. All right, so we were in 1st gear, and let's floor it. Yeah, it goes pretty well for the size of this thing. So let's put it in comfort right there. And I'm not sure how to go back into just regular automatic when I'm in manual now, but I'm sure it's gonna figure it out if I decide to not to shift maybe. There we go. It just popped into drive by itself. I'm not sure what I did to do that, but we're in drive right now. So that's all good. And it becomes a little more quiet. The exhaust gets a little more quiet. I noticed that for sure. And we're at 1,000 RPM now, at 40 miles per hour. Just cruising along, swallowing up everything that comes on the road. These has the 20-inch wheels. As I said, I would 100% go with the 22-inch wheels. I don't care if it reduces the comfort a little bit on this, because the 22s on this package in these proportions, they just suit this car, and also the spoke design and everything with those wheels are just, they feel like they're made for this SUV. Oh no, we have auto shut off on. How do I turn that off? Right here. There we go. Think about this. Genesis has only been around since 2015. And in my mind, it feels like they've been around for so much longer, just because they have such a strong identity as a brand, not just in the design, but you know what Genesis is supposed to be. It's that maybe a little less than M for BMW, or it's almost the exact same what Lexus is for Toyota. It's just a more upscale brand and the sportier brand than the regular Hyundai in this case. And I think they are onto something really cool here with their designs and how these cars drive, and specifically the interior designs of these things. It pulls really well. If I was in the market for a big SUV, this is definitely high up there on their list, just because of the design and how this thing drives. Thanks again to McDonald Hyundai here outside of Denver, and Genesis of Littleton as well. If you're interested in a brand new Hyundai or Genesis, make sure you check them out. I'm going to link them down in the description. And thank you for watching. I really appreciate you, and I will see you in the next video.